today, just today, come as a wide-eyed child.
There's no one here to impress.
There's no one here to be scared of.
It's just us wide-eyed kids looking for a kingdom.
It's here, you know, just like a treasure buried in a field.
And the king, he's here too. And he promised he would be, and he didn't have his fingers crossed.
So today, because that's all we've got, today, listen like our lives depended on it.
Let's sing to him like he's really listening.
Let's brag on him like he's eavesdropping through the door.
Today, just today, let's be kids and enjoy our king.
Got nothing to lose except our own grown-up pride.
And everything to gain, because the king, well, the king promised everything we have is here.
Wake up, everybody, the king is here.
Wake up, everybody! The king is here!
There were all these people, and they were gathered in a crowd, and they wanted to hear the latest teaching from this new teacher. His name was Jesus. There was the important ones, and they sat in the front, and they had their notebooks, and they were taking notes. There was the marginalized, they were on the edge, and they were just hanging out, kind of watching by the side. And then there were the skeptics, and they had their arms crossed, and they were just wondering about this guy named Jesus. But they all wanted to hear, and they were all intently listening to what this guy had to say. So meanwhile, there's the children, and you know what? They're just oblivious to what's going on. The fact that the teacher is teaching, Jesus is speaking, and they're just oblivious. And they're snaking in and out of the crowd, and the adults, they're shooing them away like they're a distraction. And the kids are just being kids. They're playing games, they're running around, they're chasing sparrows, they're wandering, they're imagining new things, and they're grabbing handfuls of wildflowers for their mums. And meanwhile, the teacher looks over the crowd and he says, "You want to be part of the kingdom?" You could just imagine him smiling, and he says, "You know what? If you want to be part of the kingdom, you have to be like one of these kids."
Kids who aren't sophisticated enough to worry about tomorrow.
Kids who are gullible enough to grab a shovel and start digging because they heard me say there's a treasure buried over there in that field.
Kids who are trusting enough to expect bread and fish for dinner from their dads, because that's what daddies do, give bread and fish.
I'm looking for a few good kids, Jesus said, as a grown-up rolled his eyes at a little brat gleefully ingesting a handful of grass.
Kids who are distracted enough to wander like lost sheep and scared enough to be carried home by a good shepherd.
Kids who are simple enough to trust the grown-up who's really in charge.
Kids who are humble enough to not even know they're humble.
I'm looking for a few good kids, said Jesus.
Kids who hold out their hand expecting something special, and I tell them, I've got just what you need.
Kids who let me loose in the backyard of their lives.
Kids who are wide-eyed enough to start looking for the castle when I tell them that I've got a kingdom.
Jesus said a lot more stuff. Kids kept having fun, catching their ladybugs. The adults took notes. And the kids, well, they only heard third or fourth sentences.
So in this one conversation that Jesus is having with his closest followers, you know what one of his followers asked? He said, "Jesus, who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And you know what Jesus said? He looked out into the crowd and he called on this little child to come forward. And the little child come forward, and he points to him and shows him off, and he says, "If you want to be part of the kingdom of heaven, you have to humble yourself like this little child." These are the words of Jesus.